You clicked because you want to know. Let's jump straight in, shall we?
The verdict.
So you do have autism.
I do. Well, there we go then.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm a 42-year-old psychotherapist who, like many others in lockdown, started to seriously consider the possibility that I was autistic. In 2022, I was sure enough and started to come out to people and clients that I diagnosed myself as autistic. By 2023, I was advertising myself as a neurodivergent therapist. Today, my practice is not intentionally, but it is mostly full of neurodivergent people, many autistic, which goes to disprove the theory that talking therapy isn't suitable for autistic people. I think it's more about the therapist than the therapy, which research will tell you is true anyway. It's much more important that you have a safe, trusting relationship with your therapist rather than the type of therapy that they're doing. I digress. Through my work and increasing my ND social circles, I started to realize just how pervasive and destructive the systemic ableism is out there in the organization. I've been self-employed for 6 years now, so I've been quite out of the loop. I intend to continue my education one day, and I figured if I want to ask for reasonable adjustments, I could overcome the first refusal by having a permission slip that says I am officially autistic, which is why I went down this route of getting diagnosed. So I went to the GP in February of this year, and 10 months later, it is official. I should get my report in the new year, but for now, verbal confirmation is enough for me to start processing what this means. Even though I've been processing what this means for a good few years, there is something about getting the legitimate, official, yes, you are. I can't yet tell you what that something about it is. Hopefully, in the course of this YouTube channel, you'll find out a bit more. But as for this video,
Keep watching to find out how the news landed with me and how it's going to change my life.
But you don't need to change who you are. You're brilliant who you are. Things like that.
so if you're the same kind of autistic as me, you'll like some numbers. The scores that I got for the different sections of the assessment interview.
Scores on the doors.
For reciprocal social interactions, the cutoff was 10 and I scored 17. For abnormalities in communication, the cutoff was 8 and I scored 10. For restricted, repetitive, stereotype patterns of behavior, the cutoff was 3, I scored 5. And for abnormality of development before 36 months, she said, you can't score high for this, it's 2, 1 or 0, and you got 2. Sounds like full marks to me. So the final section, abnormality of development before 36 months, was a tough one because I didn't have very much information about my developmental years and my milestones and any sort of standout memories. However, the assessor said that with the information that I gave during my interview and the sort of corroboration from my friend who was my informant, she said it was very clear how hard I'd worked. And that was enough to complete that section. So the assessor said, more than anyone that she's ever assessed, it was clear that I had worked really hard to get to where I am today, to get on in life, pretty much unsupported, which actually is the hardest, biggest part of this to swallow. She was impressed by my self-awareness and my ability to be objective about myself and my experience and my feelings, which I hadn't realized were such unusual traits or qualities. So I recorded a bit of talking to camera straight after we'd ended the call. So I'll insert that here.
Ooh, there's a dawning, a landing of disability. I already know it. I already know how hard it is to get around in the world. But this feels a bit like an assessor who's worked with a lot of people and see how hard I work to be in the world. And there's something about that that makes me I know that there's a time limit to that. I've already reached that limit, and I suppose on a regular equal basis, I reach that limit. That's burnout. And so I was reaching that in the summer, and I've been reducing my workload since then to try and give myself some space and I don't know, put myself together again or prevent myself from falling apart. But there's something about what she said about what I've intimated as the severity of my autistic traits is this isn't going to change. I have less patience and tolerance for all the bullshit in the world that I'm supposed to try and manage myself in. And I've been doing it for 40 years. So my capacity for being able to do that, my tolerance against these things that are hard is reduced. And so this validation that's just arrived at me is now also bringing with it disability awareness and just the reality that it's going to be hard. If I want to be a member of society, which I do because there's many parts of it that I like, it's going to take a lot. It does take a lot. It will continue to take a lot. And I didn't expect anything to change from hearing the verdict, but somehow it's more in my awareness. That's that. I guess I'll get my report in the new year, be able to read exactly what they say about me.
So even though I've known for a few years, I've been certain for a few years and have done a lot of processing around that, emotional processing, sort of grieving for the life that I didn't have and the help that I didn't receive, it's still a significant enough event to be officially diagnosed. Self-diagnosis is valid enough. And yet there is still something about the official diagnosis from a mental health professional. So even though I have done probably more work than everybody else in working through the things that I needed to work through as I came to the realization and acceptance that I am autistic, it was still something big to land. And when I was driving to work after I'd finished the call, I tried to listen to a podcast, got a bit of a routine, shocker. When I drive to work, I listen to podcasts. When I drive back, I will listen to music. But I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't follow what was being said. So I decided to put some drum and bass on and have a good old sing and a dance in the car on my way. And there was a part where I just let go. There was a little bit of emotion. It just rose up at the end of a song, and then it dropped away again. There were no other big outpourings of emotion, and still have not been since I had that phone call. There has, however, been a lot of sleep. Saturday and Sunday, I had to nap in the evening, which is a terrible time for napping, and I don't really do that anymore. But I just couldn't keep my eyes open. It did mess up my sleeping schedule a little, but I have been reducing my workload over the last few months, so it didn't really impact me in a negative way. But I recognise there's quite a privilege in just being able to sleep when I need to. The fact that I was sleeping so much and have been sleeping so much signals to me that my unconscious is doing a lot of work. Like I say, I haven't had to deal with very much post that first day, but somewhere in here, there's a lot of work going on. I'm going to insert a clip here that is of me discussing a concept that came up in therapy the same day that I got my results. But I had therapy in the morning and then my results at lunchtime. So this was a kind of unrelated concept and discussion, and yet completely related.
A bubble that goes around me. It was reminding me of my MD bubble when I'm high and dancing. Basically, I'm feeling good, but it's like a bubble around me. Keeps me separate from people. Kind of. It's more that I'm recognizing it has an impact. It's doing something, keeping me separate from. But I was talking about in relation to a sober phenomenon, which I don't remember what it was. I said it's like having an astronaut's helmet on. It's keeping me protected. But also, maybe I was talking about in relation to me and my awareness, and I'm keeping me in my head with my intellectualizing, which keeps me away from here. The grief that's going to come. It's already been around, but there will be more. Of the poor little, very autistic girl. Had no idea what was going on. Lived with parents who didn't have very much of an idea what was going on. And now that assessor has just kind of confirmed just how hard I've worked. It's clear how hard I've worked. And that's only been in the last 5 years. So 35 years of not a clue. Meow. So, like 10-year-old me. Every year old me. I remember reading, what's the book? Basically, it's telling you how to communicate. But yeah, poor little old me. Presumably ignored by mental health professionals as well as adults. And I didn't know what was going on. So I just stopped being aware of what was going on. And I took solace in my thoughts and logic and observing what was around me and imitating it and recreating what I'd seen, faking it until I made it. Turns out I wasn't fooling anyone. I've been working really hard. And even though I worked really hard to present a typical way of being, I was not. It makes me wonder what my scores would have been had I not worked as hard as I had I not been a therapist. So how it's going to affect my life? I think there is obviously more work to be done. I say obviously, it's not obvious. I believe there's more work to be done around my younger selves and her experience. A world that didn't make sense without people that tried to help it make sense. Eventually just cutting off from trying to make it make sense, and all of whatever it was that would happen in my body that was confusion or shock or fear or just trying to understand, all of that was disassociated from. And I just became, I don't know what I became, and maybe that's part of the work. But I've worked hard to reconnect to my body and my feelings, and I've done a really good job, even if I do say so myself. Well done, me. I think now is the time for expressing the sadness and the confusion and the fear of my younger self and of grieving for the life that I didn't have. And I know I've done some of that over the last few years, and I know that it's been really hard. I think now there's the uncovering of maybe just a final line of confirmation, which just makes it a bit more real somehow. It's really bizarre. I'm all about, you know, your experience. And if you say that this is who you are, how you are, if you're autistic, you're ADHD, you're dyslexic, any of that, you don't need to be diagnosed for it to be valid. And I stand by that. And if you go through the process of having a doctor in a white coat, like the white coat effect is something that has been studied. Obviously, my assessor did not have a white coat and we did not meet in person. And yet there is validation and corroboration, and I feel seen, actually. Not very well feeling safe in a room of autistic people who definitely weren't questioning that I was autistic. But being in that room, we might talk about the general struggles and our personal struggles day to day, but we're all kind of coming from the same place. And I think having that assessor on the other side, having observed me and really emphasizing how hard she can see that I've worked, I feel very seen, very validated, very tired. And like the fact that I've found the second half of this year really hard is okay.
is really impacting my income, my ability to work and earn an income. So the future looks like grief work in therapy, connecting to the disallowed feelings from childhood, sadness, fear, confusion. I'm sure there'll be some others. I am confident that I have reconnected to my body well enough that I will experience the full spectrum of whatever it is that needs to arise. And doing that with an other is healing, because I was not able to do anything with any other when I was little. I am apprehensive about reconnecting to that. And even now, just the thought of how hard, how confusing life must have been 10 times, if not 100 times worse than what I experience now. And gosh, sometimes that's really hard. That's the end of this journey. I will receive my 21-page report of all the ways in which I have been working hard to try and get on in life. I imagine that will be a tough read. I don't know if I will record my first reading of it to camera or if I might actually read it with somebody else. I guess I'll wait and see what happens when it arrives. I do anticipate it being hard reading. If you've been through this or going through this or planning to go through this in the future, I send you love and support and strength. And I hope that you have people around you that can be with you during the process. You don't have to do it alone. My life is not materially changing because of this just yet. Like I say, when I go back into education, I will ask for reasonable adjustments. I don't know what they're going to be. There's a whole other thing about feeling okay to ask for something different to set myself apart. But that's for the future. It is also allowing me to even more greatly give myself permission to rest, to do less. Thankfully, I've been doing that for 4 or 5 months, which has really benefited me. And whilst there is a bit of privilege in that, I'm actually really starting to suffer because of it. And this is where the autistic tax comes in, I suppose. Heard about the ADHD tax for getting payments, for getting appointments and things like that. Everything ends up costing more money or taking more time. And I think with the autistic tax, everything is just more. It takes longer to process things. It takes longer to recover from things. It just means there is less capacity to live a life. And you need to live a life. Otherwise, what's the point? And quieting that voice, I think, the one that's got something to say about my sensitivities, noise, sound, and busyness. Like, that's the thing that I can still get uppity with myself about. Come on, just do the thing, just go there, just stick it out. And sometimes I will, oftentimes I won't. And if I'm not going to, I need to be kind to myself about the reasons why. And whilst we know there aren't really autism support services out there in the UK, there are charities and CICs and local community groups. And I urge you, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it might be scary or anxiety provoking or all of those things, find a way to connect with other autistic people. They are the most forgiving, most accepting, most non-judgmental people. And even though it's hard to socialize, even though it takes a lot, we are wired for connection, and connecting to low pressure, like-minded people will do you good. And until then, and after then, consider subscribing. I am going to make videos about my journey to this point, obviously what happens next. And it's my intention to make videos that can help you help yourself. And it's my intention to make videos that just entertaining or provide respite or both. So thanks for watching to the end. I hope you stick around for future videos.